back, guys. That was Don't Doubt Your Vibe by Elon Musk. And speaking of Elon, I've got another treat for you today. Elon did hop on another Twitter Spaces, and this one was hosted by a former employee of Twitter, George Hotz. I do apologize. I don't have the full conversation with Elon. I searched everywhere. Usually the people that host the Twitter Spaces post the recording on their feed. Unfortunately, George did not. But I do have a nice hour, about an hour for you of Elon talking all things Twitter. In particular, one topic: was Twitter about to enter bankruptcy before Elon acquired the company? All that and more on this Twitter Spaces chat with Elon Musk. Enjoy.
Read every tweet from the table to get the views every 100 seconds. That's a lot of reads.
Look, the point I'm trying to make here is view count is already counted. Like it's already a thing that is happening. But view count currently, the issue is that it's going to Google Cloud instead of the on-prem stuff. The view count is making a call to Google Cloud in batches at a rate that is towards the magnitude slower than what is needed to render it with the current pipe. Yes. That's the actual issue. So, but if you then say, okay, look, we don't care about it being real time because it's something like a like is being updated about every second or so. But if we say
on your tweets, yes. On most people's tweets, no.
No, I'm just saying like the update frequency is near real time. But the point I'm trying to make is like view counts are already counted. They're just being batched and being sent over a slow pipe to an analytics software on Google Cloud. Yeah. Whereas the likes are using the on-prem database, but you could. That's like an arbitrary decision. It could use the on-prem database as well.
Yes.
If it had not been an arbitrary decision to go off-prem to Google Cloud, then it would be trivial to add likes.
It would be considerably easier.
It wouldn't be onerous to add views. Especially if you're not like too precise about exactly how many views there were. If you like let it float a little bit, and you occasionally drop a view count, so it's because like we're not like trying to balance a bank book here. Then I think views actually like would be relatively easy.
If views were in the same database as likes, yes, it would be easy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, and it should be. It's absurd that views are on a totally different database in Google Cloud instead of the on-prem system. So anyway, that's sort of a unnecessary complexity. I mean, the Twitter stack right now is like basically combining the difficulties of three different worlds, which is running a complex real-time on-prem database that's in 3 data centers in Atlanta, one near in Oregon, and one in Sacramento. And Sacramento is like possibly the worst place to have a data center because it's hot. And then, like the summer, it got so hot that the data center failed because the HVAC didn't work. But then, in addition to that, you've got also using AWS, so using Amazon and using Google Cloud. So all three are required to operate Twitter.
Fleets uses AWS. They built all the fleets in AWS.
Yeah.
I read the Google Docs for why too. Basically,
what?
For why they put fleets in AWS. Basically, they couldn't get enough provisioning for the internal data centers.
Yeah, I mean, like Sam Pilar has been helping out, and I think Sam was saying there was like some pretty nutty amount of data storage is actually analytics for app versions that don't exist anymore. Yeah, like I think it was like 15%, maybe 20% is like was literally logging data from apps that don't exist. If that's what, this is like, okay, that's wow. So anyway, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on.
25% of the CPUs are running the ads prediction model. It's the tiniest model. Those CPUs, only 30% is actually running the model. 70% is serializing and deserializing the data into 4 different formats.
Yeah, and here's the crazy thing. So, which is like really kind of mind blowing to think about it. But it took me a few weeks to actually even wrap my head around it. Google, so I should say, Twitter's advertising is actually, for the most part, irrelevance optimizing. And so it's like, wait a second, like, what do you mean irrelevance optimizing? Well, when I ask people who've used Twitter for a while, it's like, how many things have you bought on Twitter? The answer is usually nothing. But it's like, well, how many things did you buy on Instagram? Oh, I bought a whole bunch of stuff last week. It's like, well, don't you think it's interesting that you wouldn't have accidentally bought something on Twitter after all this time? And like, the reason you haven't is because the ads are maximizing irrelevance. I feel like I'm stuck in a Douglas Adams novel. It's like the spaceship was powered by maximum improbability. So so like, well, you're like, wait a second, why on earth would you maximize irrelevance? Well, because the team was told to maximize the number of advertising impressions. So what happens if you try to maximize advertising impressions? Well, you actually are going to maximize irrelevance, because if somebody's spending 5 minutes on Twitter and 2 of those 5 minutes are spent clicking on an ad, you've now lost 40% of your impressions. Like head exploding emoji.
Yeah. Dwell time is probably a much better signal for ads than impressions. I mean, this is what makes TikTok so good. They have dwell time on all the videos. The time you spend on an ad is probably better than whether you saw the ad or not. Though I somewhat disagree in the limit. If you had an ideal ML model trying to maximize impressions, I think you'd end up with someone who just scrolls Twitter and looks at the ads all day.
Look, I'm just saying that, like, I when I was going through this with some of the engineers a few weeks ago, it took me a moment. It was so insane that I couldn't comprehend it. It took me a while to actually understand that because I was saying that, like, no, we want people to click on the ads. That's the whole point of having an ad, is so that you might buy something. That's the reason for advertising. And so, an ad that is highly relevant is content. An ad that is irrelevant is spam. So we want ads that are as relevant to people's needs as possible. And yet I see many ads that, in fact, most ads are not relevant. And when I ask people, what are the concerns about Twitter, is like, well, Twitter keeps showing me the same ad that I don't care about all the time. I'm like, well, that seems crazy. But then I found the reason, which is that they were being asked to maximize impressions instead of, maximizing actual clicks and buying things, which is what they should be doing.
When you run an ad campaign on Twitter, you can choose, I think. I'm not really sure what the backend does. I heard the backend tries to maximize money, but you can choose whether you want to run an impressions campaign or whether you want to run a clicks campaign.
Yes. Things have changed recently. So we have, basically since the acquisition, it was like, no, guys, we need to maximize relevance. And there actually has been good work in the direction of relevance optimization. So that this is, I don't mean to be sort of all negative here, but there's a lot of, there has been good work recently in the direction of actually having ads that are relevant.
For questions on this, I'm super nerdy about ad tech stuff. I'm super curious how Twitter can compete with like Google and Facebook, just in terms of their identity network and how well they have like bucketed groups of interest to target. Like, how does Twitter compete?
Actually, I think Twitter can actually do arguably better for someone that has used Twitter for some period of time. So if you have used Twitter for, let's say, I don't know, a few weeks, I mean, if you have like you're several hours in, and it's the signal, the amount of signal that you have is high. You know what people, what topics people followed, what accounts people followed, what they liked, what they you can say, certainly view count. There's and a bunch of the stuff is actually used at Twitter for recommended tweets. What is called sometimes the home timeline. If you like, there's like a little stars icon in the upper right of the Twitter interface, and it'll say like for you or latest. So for you is recommended tweets. A lot of people don't even realize that the upper right stars icon is a way that you can switch between recommended tweets and accounts that you actually follow. I bet a lot of people on this call currently do not know that is what that stars icon does. But the recommended tweets are actually pretty good.
Home ML is much better than Ads ML. Home ML is using much larger models, many more features. The Ads ML is very rudimentary.
Yes, but essentially, they should be going through the same pipeline.
Yeah.
So, if Twitter can accurately recommend tweets to you that you don't explicitly follow, it can by the same token also show ads that are relevant to you.
So the way that a lot of platforms do ad sales and a lot of like purchasers expect ads isn't necessarily I'm going to give you these ads and I trust you to serve them to the right people. It's usually almost the opposite, where it's I want to target this group of people in this region who went to a Jiffy Lube in the last 72 days. That level of micro-targeting is something a lot of ad buyers now expect, and like it's a huge part of how CPMs can get so high on platforms like YouTube.
Regardless of whether they're targeted or not, if your goal is CPMs, you should have a very good idea that someone's going to click on an ad before you show it to them, and you can do this with good ML.
But sometimes these advertisers will serve entirely different versions of the same ad to different
Can you turn this guy off, please? He's just talking nonsense. Thanks. I've actually talked to the advertisers. I talked to some major advertisers just today, this morning, and they were looking for, as you would expect, a return on investment. So that if they spend a certain amount of money, are they going to get a return in excess of the amount of money spent? Quite rational, not arbitrary or random. So, and I won't say who it is, but there are major advertisers who spent $60 million on Twitter this year, and they were like, we calculated the ROI. Actually, like another company helped them calculate the ROI, and Twitter was the lowest. And this is why they're having difficulty spending additional money on Twitter, because they're literally looking at the lowest ROI. I'm like, yeah, okay, well, that's quite sensible. And then they were like, well, when this particular product is discussed in replies, wouldn't it make sense to, at that point, provide an ad that perhaps, since you are discussing this product, perhaps you would like to buy it? I'm like, yes, that would make total sense. We should, of course, do that. They were like, yeah, that would be awesome. If you do that, then we will be glad to spend more advertising money. Meaning that they were very rational and not arbitrary and random.
I'll stand up for Theo worked at Twitch. He's provided some good stuff on this space so far. While in the limit I agree with you, it would require retraining advertisers. And I'm not saying you can't do it, but advertisers have come to expect a lot of this micro-targeting stuff. Facebook pioneered a lot of it.
Yeah, look, I think at the end of the day, if you can say, like, if you can make a clear equivalence, like just say, like, for if you spend amount X to generate profit Y, provided Y is greater than X, you should continue. And provided if you've got good analytics that demonstrate that, wherever the advertiser is, you will succeed. And that is not currently the case for Twitter, but it will be.
Do you want to fight every battle, or do you want to, I mean, is this the battle Twitter should be fighting? Or should we just provide the most standard, boring ads interface and just make it good like Instagram's?
Instagram has an excellent advertising interface. As it's just literally talk to anyone, and they probably, if they're using Instagram at all, they probably bought something last week.
I bought stuff off Instagram ads. Yeah, Facebook has GPUs in the data center too. They're running decent sized models on people.
Yeah, it's. I don't think we're trying to split the atom here. You know, we're just literally trying to show people ads for something they might actually want to buy. This is not the Manhattan Project, even though the database weirdly is called Manhattan. So it's just this is common sense stuff. So I don't think this is monumentally difficult to implement. It will get implemented and it will get done fast.
Elon, would it be possible to offer like a more expensive $100 a month version with zero advertisements? I mean, 1% of people might be willing to pay that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a no-brainer. This is just a question of what complexity do we add when.
Okay.
It's difficult to, frankly, it's difficult to overstate the difficulty of adding stuff to adding features. Features that should be easy to add are not easy to add because the stack complexity is extremely complex.
So can we do refactors for
my God. We've made some simplifications even in the last few weeks, but this is it will explode your mind to go through the entire stack. It's like wow.
Well, but you have to sort of make a trade-off between features and refactoring, right? Like if you have X amount of engineering team, you can decide how you want to allocate that.
Yeah, I mean, basically, we're going to make a series of, I think, significant short-term product improvements, but then I think we'll need to rewrite. If in order to have a high velocity of improvement, unfortunately I think it's a rewrite is needed. Like if you say look back at old school Apple, when they had their old operating system, and then Jobs came along with OS X, it was a new stack. It wasn't like let's fool around with the old Apple OS. It was like he just took the next OS and adapted that to Apple and said, yeah, your old software just doesn't work anymore. Too bad.
But an operating system doesn't run at scale. Like, this is doable, but I think it'd be pretty hard to do with continuity. To roll out this new stack promising no downtime on a clean rewrite seems very, very hard.
Yeah. Nonetheless, I think that's what will be needed long term.
Okay.
I actually have a question about the stack.
Sure.
So you brought up the 20 million lines of Scala before, and you mentioned that the microservices have a lot of the complexity of the Twitter system. So I think microservices I believe microservices for complexity, like a system at that scale won't really microservices land.
Sorry. You're breaking up.
Now.
You think microservice yes or microservice
no? I'm
no?
fine with the microservices. My concern is the infrastructure or the tech stack that you guys are using, because instead of using commercial or open source or any standardized products, you guys have inbuilt or in-house your own implementations of everything. Sure, you're using Kafka, but your RPC layer is Thrift, which is developed internally. Your database is Manhattan.
Wait. Thrift is a Facebook product.
Which one?
Thrift is a Facebook product.
My point is that
we got the TFE, we got the GraphQL, we got the product mixer, we got the ranker, we got the Manhattan database, we got the Strato, we got the TweetPy, we got the Gizmo Duck, we got the Tweeter Memcache.
And then wait till you find out they're all built on top of Finatra and Finagle, which are entirely custom Twitter open source Scala projects.
Yeah, I get that. My point is that if you have all of this custom and not super standardized products, when 80% of your workforce happens to leave, now how much more difficult is it for new people or even existing people to work with that infrastructure and be able to iterate on it, much less refactor it?
I mean, I think I could do it, but I think it would take me 6 months.
Hilarious.
So, George, you mentioned that at Facebook, everything could run locally. I've worked at companies where we had a dedicated team just for developer experience. And their job was like literally to Dockerize and containerize everything and just make the app run. So people that can code can code. And it just sounds like Twitter's lacking that.
Yeah, you want to hire those people for Twitter? I think Twitter's definitely lacking that.
So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Elon, how far are you guys away from having an engineer, like a new engineer on day one? Just walk in, go through a quick orientation, and then get a single dev instance running, and just being able to submit a PR on the same day, or maybe the same week.
A dev instance? No, Twitter doesn't believe in that. We have prod, and sometimes staging.
Or local, any kind of local.
It is
local.
no. I think to your point, it takes a while. There's so much custom stuff that just understanding where everything is and how it all connects, I think is a matter. It takes at least a few weeks. So I think would be difficult to be productive, without at least a month of intense effort. I mean, and that would be like you're really good at software. I'd say if you can do something useful in a month.
I think I understand most of it, but I think a lot of the problems are not a question of understanding. I think they're of just toolings and workflows. The fact that I can't stand up Twitter anywhere except for the data center. For example, some services, when you develop them, they pack. It's a 1.6 gigabyte binary. It has to upload to the data center. That takes 20 minutes. And then you unpack it, and then, 30 minutes later, you've tested your one-line change, and you made a typo.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like it's basically to George's point, which is a good point, is that there's so much complexity and so much interaction across so many different levels that to make progress is very difficult. Progress is being made, but it is very difficult to make progress. When you touch like one element of the system, it affects like 17 other elements. So, like one argument in favor of, say, a whole bunch of microservices is if they are truly independent, you can add additional microservices without affecting the rest of the system. But that is not the case at Twitter. Like I said, we have this challenge of trying to add view count to tweets, which I think is really going to make the site pop, because we'll see just how many people actually view your tweets. Like this is completely normal for video. So if you look at even a video on Twitter, it will actually show you how many views the video has gotten, and that gives you some indication of the popularity of the video, how interested are people in the video. So Twitter has views for videos, but does not have views for tweets. So you can tweet something and think, man, did anyone was it like a tweet fell in the forest and nobody heard it? Did anyone see my tweet? Actually, lots of people saw your tweet, but you don't know because they didn't want to put themselves out there by actually liking it or retweeting or replying. So the site will pop in a big way just showing view count of tweets. And people realize, holy smoke, a lot of people actually seeing my tweet. That's cool. And then, like I said earlier, we need to add functionality where you can like a tweet without advertising the fact that you liked it to the world, or being able to say that maybe you didn't like it in a, I love that thing happened, like earthquake example. You don't love earthquakes, but it's noteworthy, certainly. And but putting a heart next to an earthquake, that's weird. So you want to have more fidelity in how what you think of a tweet, and you want to have the option of making that how you feel about that tweet public or not public. That's like pretty obvious stuff. But making those changes to the existing Twitter system is very difficult.
Why not refactor and make the changes later? Why do they need to be done now?
I think we need to make some improvement in the near term. And I think we can make some improvement in the near term.
So I ran Git log this morning, and I looked at how many commits are going into the code base and what they actually are. Huge green diffs.
For view count or for something else?
All sorts of things. Maybe 10% of them are view count related.
Okay.
But all of these other ones they're still green diffs. There are a lot of people writing a lot of code. Today, Timeline Mixer was quote unquote deprecated for Home Mixer. Great.
Yeah.
It's deprecated for Home Mixer. Was Timeline Mixer deleted? Oh no. Now we have both Timeline Mixer and Home Mixer.
They're running simultaneously?
Yes.
Well, it's not very meaningful to deprecate something if it's still running, obviously.
Yeah, exactly what I'm saying, right? Nothing gets actually deprecated to Twitter. So Twitter has 3 APIs, and you can find this on public Twitter. If you go to Chrome Inspector, Twitter has a 1.1 API, a 2.0 API, a GraphQL API. It also has 1.1 developer and 2.0 developer. It has 5 APIs that I can find. And then there's other ones people have talked about, too, that I don't know how to find because I don't have Android emulator on my computer. This stuff needs to be cleaned up, and no one's doing it.
Isn't it? It's pretty common.
Hey guys, you mind if I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah, so I just wanted to know, Elon, so obviously, as you know, I think with the Tesla, and what you guys do on the autopilot, you guys are recreating and redoing a lot of the code, and it sounds like with Twitter, it sounds like it's kind of a nightmare. So how are you prioritizing what you fix, what you're going to implement, like the views? How are you stack ranking everything, especially if things are taking a lot of extra time to get done?
Well, bear in mind, the acquisition only closed 6 weeks ago, ish. So this is probably the biggest amount of change that has happened in an acquisition, possibly in history. We're at a little over 2,000 people. We were at close to 8,000 people. The site is still running, as evidenced by us being on it. This is reasonably good progress. The most essential thing to be done at Twitter was to cut the burn rate so that Twitter does not just go bankrupt next year. That was task number one. And there's still work to do on that front, but it's mostly done. Then it's also important to move the revenue base from being essentially entirely advertiser dependent on advertisers, and not just dependent on advertisers, but dependent on fuzzy brand advertising, as opposed to advertising that has a clear ROI. And as we're heading into what appears to be a recession, the first thing that companies will cut is discretionary brand advertising. So it is important for Twitter to therefore have a subscriber base. This is the reason for the Twitter Verified. The reason we're able to make progress with the Twitter Verified is because it makes use of a product that sort of was pre-existing, was called, but not very useful, called Twitter Blue. So being able to move to have subscriber revenue be a meaningful part of Twitter revenue is going to be essential for the prosperity, just for the survival of Twitter. So that's why that's actually the number one priority is getting the Twitter Verified to work, and then also getting Twitter verification for businesses and organizations to work. So that you're starting to see that roll out now, where an organization can actually identify who belongs to that organization. So, who is actually which accounts actually belong to Disney and can speak on behalf of Disney or on behalf of, say, Stanford or any organization. If someone says they're affiliated with an organization, how do you know that besides them saying it in their bio? Well, we're now linking that on the back end so that so that organizations can say, yes, these Twitter handles actually do belong to the company and are authenticated. And this is also, obviously an avenue for business revenue. So the subscriber revenue and sort of back-end business revenue is really important as we see a rapid decline in brand advertising.
But these are all features, and they're all at the expense of refactors.
Yeah. No, they are.
Okay.
But
well, thank you for acknowledging.
I think we won't get to the refactor if we don't make these changes.
Why?
Because we used to be bankrupt.
What's the runway?
Could I jump in with a quick question to cut the runway silence there?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I feel like Elon, you're our philosopher king. Plato would be very proud of you. You're extremely technically competent, and you I think really understand how to drive things in a good direction. But I really love how you're also leaning into the voice of the people and letting them have a say as well. But you can't have a million backseat drivers. So I guess my question to you is how do you integrate the voice of the people when there are a lot of people that just don't have the right information to make decisions? And how do you create the right governance systems to really find the signal from all of the noise to get Twitter to become something more like a republic rather than a dictatorship? Curious what you think.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the relatively near term, like these things are all kind of moot if Twitter is ogling into the ground financially. So I was thinking about the runway question, like just to sort of give people some perspective here. Twitter was tracking to spend about $5 billion next year.
We needed the trip to Disneyland.
Yeah, exactly. Then, because of the nature of this transaction, where there's $12.5 billion of debt and the Fed rate has been going crazy, there's on the order of $1.5 billion ish of debt servicing that's required. So we're talking about like net cash outflow if you didn't make any changes of on the order of like $6.5 billion next year, with revenue probably tracking to $3 billion. So that's like a negative cash flow situation of $3 billion a year. Not good. Since Twitter has $1 billion in cash. So that's why I spent the last 5 weeks cutting costs like crazy.
I think we also got to get the advertisers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do need to get the advertisers, but like I said, I've spoken to a number of the advertisers. Their requests are not fuzzy or irrational or anything. They're like quite reasonable. They're like, just show us an ROI that makes sense. And I'm like, yes, I agree. If I were in their position, I would also want an ROI that makes sense, especially when headed into difficult economic times, where these questions are asked a lot more than in prosperous times. In prosperous times, there is plenty of budget for advertising, and you can get away with unclear ROI. But when times are tough, then the hard questions of return on investment are asked. And when you do not have a clear answer, then advertisers don't want to advertise because they're being sane. That's the main issue. So this is important. So now, with the changes that we're making here on massively reducing the burn rate and building subscriber revenue, I now think that Twitter will, in fact, be okay next year. I think we will be about, hopefully, sort of roughly cash flow break even. That's what I expect for next year. But this will be difficult. But I think that's where what will happen is roughly cash flow break even, as opposed to minus $3 billion ish on with $1 billion of cash, which would be therefore dead. So that's the reason for my actions. They may seem sometimes spurious or odd or whatever. Is because this is not. We have an emergency fire drill in our hands. That's the reason. Not because I'm like naturally capricious, or at least aspirationally, I'm not naturally capricious. But if you sort of, if you say you're looking at it from my standpoint and you're saying, okay, wow, this company is like basically you're in a plane that is headed towards the ground at high speed with the engines on fire and the controls don't work.
I use the same analogy in comma. Can we afford good food?
Yeah. Well,
it's really important to me.
No, I think we can afford good food. The madness of for example, the headquarters food budget was that it was $13 million a year of fixed rate, no matter how many people showed up. So if the normal meal price would have been, if the building was fully occupied, $20 for actually quite a good lunch. The food was good. But if you drop to 5% occupancy, you've now multiplied the effective meal cost by 20, and that's where you get a $400 lunch, literally.
Yeah, absolutely. The food was great. I loved the chia seed pudding and the smoothies in the morning. But yeah, you got to tell everyone to come into the office. It's crazy to me that people think they can have a job where they don't show up to an office.
Right, and like it seems like a logical thing if you have a building where there's literally 5% occupancy, that you would seek to renegotiate the food budget and not have it be 20 times more than it should be. But that was literally the case. So
the food's a lot worse now than it was. A lot worse.
Yeah, well, we can definitely improve that. So that's not like I think some impossible thing to overcome. So,
but no, I think
terrible food. This is not it's not going to break the bank. The issue is more you can't pay like $13 million a year for a mostly empty building for lunch, and not even including dinner. So
I could save $13 million by switching ads prediction from TF serving to Onyx runtime alone.
Yeah, I'm saying we can totally have a good lunch.
All right.
We're not in like lunch purgatory for the rest of time. We may have gone too far, is what I'm saying. I admit we may have gone too far in cost cutting. With respect to the lunch, that could be the case. And so we'll have to sort of, we may have overcorrected in that regard, and we can fix it. This is not an insurmountable problem. Yeah.
Well, all right, so I'm like refactors, food. How about free speech?
Well, I mean, free speech. Let me tell you that if somebody's got to pay the servers, okay, so the speech has got to cost at least $8, because otherwise, how do we pay the friggin' server bill? There's like $1.5 billion ish, of all-in server-related costs. We're trying to get that lower, but it's a lot. It's like not trivial. And a minimum, somebody's got to pay the bills. Advertising for sure, but there's some degree of subscriptions. And then on the speech front, like my general philosophy on that is that we should hew close to the law in any given country. Yeah.
Elon, that makes me so happy if that's actually what the policy is. I'm upset when I see Paul Graham get banned for mentioning Mastodon.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I think there's a far cry. Look, you can make arguments for Kanye West, you can make arguments for Elon Jet, but you can't make an argument for Paul Graham.
No, I agree. That was a mistake.
Okay. Can people post Mastodon now?
Yeah, fucking post Mastodon all goddamn day long. I don't care.
Yeah, because we're going to build something way better than Mastodon, right? Like, come on, how hard could it be to beat these?
From an evolutionary standpoint, how'd that work out for the Mastodons?
I don't know what a Mastodon was.
I still feel like there's something to be said about like open source projects, though. Like you have Linux that outcompeted Windows. Like big networks of like armies of volunteers can maintain pretty complex things. Like sure, maybe Linux is run a little bit like a monarchy, like George said earlier in the space, but I do think that there's something to be said about open source software in general, and it's like anti-fragility.
I mean, Linux is absolutely run like a monarchy, but Linux is not Twitter. Linux has a large code base because it needs to support many different device drivers and many different devices. Twitter needs to support basic core functionality, and I think open sourcing it, there's no value in the code, right? The operating system has value in the code. The value of Twitter is in the network.
I suppose, but there's still like composability arguments, right? Like you guys could reuse and other people could build on top of.
If Twitter was open source tomorrow, what would you build?
I don't know. Honestly, I think we should just post the source somewhere. I frankly,
that would be sick.
Elon, no one would ever get it to run.
Well, I mean, listen, that would just, I think, finally explain.
Do it.
That is to explain with words, because you can just look at it.
Dump a tarball Twitter source. It's unbelievable.
So
I have two ideas that I would use.
Post it all 20 million lines of Scala, and you can just watch and read to your heart's content. Because wow.
I think it's actually more. I think those are just the used lines.
Round numbers,
Yep.
We'll take a million.
Well, that's just Scala. We have a lot of Python as well.
Yeah.
But actually,
there's a lot of
most open source code quality is like really poor. And on Linux, most of the contributors are paid by like Intel and other big firms. So it's not really a fair comparison at all.
Yeah, sure, but you still have like composability though, right? Like a lot of people can build on top of what they're building, and then that makes like I don't know.
I mean that's absolutely true, but who's going to sponsor it? And no one's going to sponsor open source engineers unless
composability is not inherent to open source. Composability is a thing that takes a lot of effort and money and time as well. Like there's a lot of code bases that are open source that aren't composable at all. The theoretical potential is there, but it's not like a thing almost always.
No one is going to volunteer to your open source project to come in and do meaningful refactors that reduce the code. They're going to write a feature, be like, please merge it so I don't have to maintain it, and then
yeah, that sounds about right.
Still though,
I have a quick idea, Elon. Is there any way to like gamify getting more people to use Twitter? Because I think a lot of people hear about Twitter in the news. They don't really understand how to use it or get the app and use it. But maybe if there's a way to encourage other people to show people how to use it, it could help get more daily active users eventually.
Yeah. Well, so daily active users have been growing reasonably well, especially if you count real users and not like bots and trolls. So, I mean, like one of the super crazy things that I discovered, I only discovered this like basically about 10 days ago, was that Twitter was being scammed to the tune of $60 million a year for SMS texts, not counting North America. So I'm like, what do you mean? I was like, what do you mean? Like, there's $60 million of SMS texts. Yeah, Twitter is paying telcos. Basically, there are telcos who are not being super honest out there in other parts of the world who were basically gaming the system and running like two-factor authentication SMS texts over and over again and just creating a zillion bot accounts to literally run up the tab so that Twitter would SMS text them, and Twitter would just pay them millions of dollars without even asking about it. And now this created some problems because I said, well, we got to stop that. And I said, like, cut off any telco that's got fraud above 10%. Now that did cause some havoc in many parts of the world. And then people were like imputing like bad motives to it. But it was literally, I just said to the team, hey, cut off any telco where the fraud's above 10%. That turned out to be 390 telcos. I'm like, damn, that's high.
Oh my gosh.
Outside of North America, so I'm like, okay, I didn't know there were that many telcos in existence. But it turns out there's some, you get to like the fourth tier telco in Belarus, and you got some sketchy things going on.
But
so
now you have people complaining that they can't log into Twitter because their SMS doesn't work.
Yes, and so like now we're going back to the telcos and saying, listen, if you stop scamming us, then we will gladly pay you some amount of money in SMS texts, but you can't turn a blind eye to relentless, bogus SMS texts. So then we're having that conversation with the telcos, and then we can turn them back on and say, listen, you just be reasonable. We'll take 10% of fraud. It's fine. Mm-hmm. But we're not going to take 90% fraud. So we're not going to spend $60 million a year on literally SMS texts outside of North America. So a bunch of those users were just fake, and like literally for the purpose of running up Twitter's tab on SMS texts. Kid you not, this is insane. So now, but to your point of making Twitter easier to use, like the obvious move I think is like if you download the Twitter app or you go to Twitter, it should put you into the search page. And immediately show you like what's trending. So it's like, as opposed to saying, hey, you need to download the app, you need to install the app, you need to give us a username, you need to give us a friggin' phone number, and like making it like an escape room to open a Twitter account. It's like we're going to give you a bunch of math puzzles basically to open a Twitter account. And then once you're in the Twitter account, you're just sitting there with nothing to do. This is insane. It's not clear to me you should actually have a Twitter account at all unless you need to make a write action. Like unless you need to write something. So if you want to like or retweet or tweet or something like that, okay, at that point, yes, you need an account.
Then why did people put the pop-up back? You said they could do it.
Which pop-up?
The pop-up that I emailed you the first week that I wanted to remove. The one that when you scroll on Twitter when you're logged out.
I didn't say we should put okay, that's a miscommunication.
Oh, great. Let's get rid of it again. Right? Because I got rid of it entirely. I got rid of it entirely. They added it back, and they messed up adding it back, so it wasn't dismissible, and then they fixed that 5 days later. But, like, they didn't mean to make it non-dismissible, and it was non-dismissible, and I'd love to remove it altogether.
Yeah, it's not clear to me why, unless there's some reason that I'm not aware of, we should not be prohibiting just a read-only scroll.
I know, there's no reason except that people are scared to lose quote-unquote MDAO.
Yeah, this optimization of MDAO is like, I think creating a bizarre incentive structure that doesn't make sense.
It's endemic in the organization. They love MDAO.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that actually matters is like true user minutes, not like fake user minutes, but like this. We're confident this is a real user. We're confident this is this user actually spent time on the app, like as measured by like screen time on the phone, which is since the phone is the primary use case. And then to get like another layer deeper is what we said. The thing to optimize is unregretted user minutes. So I've heard like a lot of people say like, hey, I spent 2 hours on TikTok, but I regret those 2 hours. I'm not saying I don't want to trash TikTok because it's quite compelling to a lot of people, but I do often hear that people regret the amount of time they spent on it. So I think the thing we'd want to optimize for is unregretted, true human user minutes. That's the thing to optimize for, not MDAO. And then with respect to advertising, as I said earlier, you want advertising that is as close to content as possible, where it's something where it's a product or service that you want when you want it, then that's actually useful. It's actually at that point becomes indistinguishable from content. So these are the things to aim for. We're going to get rid of this MDOT bullshit.
And we're going to let's get rid of all the pop-ups. Let's get rid of when you click likes and quote tweets. Because fundamentally what these things are doing is they're lowering total minutes on the website. People see that pop-up and they click the X.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that it is important to sort of have some authentication mechanism so people can't, so you can't just create 100,000, instances of virtual, just to create 100,000 virtual machines and just create and have them all behave like users. Although at this point with ChatGPT, you could probably just crush, frankly, because ChatGPT would exceed, I think, the.
Oh, it's about to be impossible. CAPTCHA is about to be impossible. I don't know what we're going to do.
Yeah, but I mean, at least we can try. At least we can make it so it's not trivial to have 100,000 bot accounts, which it currently is.
The best things to do are social proof kind of metrics.
Sure.
Gmail. Remember OG Gmail with the invites?
Just follow the tree. So if the referral basis, and if there's one referral that goes sideways, you just look at that and you cut off that entire referral tree. That's how I did at the beginning.
Hey, George, can I get 2 questions in? Or 2 thoughts?
Yeah, what do you got?
So, I'm in San Diego on my Starlink right now, so this is pretty awesome.
Cool.
I'm a father of 4, and Elon, I have 2 ideas to help boost revenue. So my kids, they're going to be exposed to advertisements no matter what. Could we have a Twitter Nest feature where parents can let their kids have accounts, and the parents can control what advertisers their kids see? Because my kids are going to buy Robux or app, they're going to be buying stuff no matter what, and I'd like to choose what they're exposed to.
Refactors first.
I agree with that as a software developer. Then the next thing is there are tweets that I want to boost that are other people's tweets because whether it's a political party or could we see a paper trail of where the money comes from? So going back to what Pablo said, is it Pablo? Yeah, Pablo said earlier, how to see through the noise. I think it's a lot easier to see through the noise when we can see the paper trail of the money that is influencing the tweets. And I think that's what, as an older user, I was frustrated with the bots. And I'm fine with people paying to get things boosted, but I'd like to see what the source is, where it's coming from. That's it.
Okay. Yeah. Agreed.
I did see you post a while back about video monetization. Is that a thing you're down to talk more on? Because I have a lot of thoughts after my time at Twitch.
Twitter certainly needs to enable longer videos. I wasn't clear on what the limitation on the Twitter video length was, but I was recently told that it was a 2 gigabyte file size limitation, at least in the current stack. So, it's difficult to have video monetization if the videos are extremely short. But if you have a better codec than is currently used at Twitter and resolution that is reasonable for a phone, you can have some pretty long videos in 2 gigabytes. But to first approximation, I feel the first order is you need to actually be able to post a sufficiently long video. If you cannot do that, then nothing else matters.
Yeah, I don't think most people have access to that. So when I did that live stream before I joined Twitter, I had to get Media Studio, and I actually got this. My friend was like, "Oh yeah, I know a guy in a Telegram group." And he PayPal'd him $30 and got access to it. So that's what it takes to get access to long video on Twitter today.
Yeah, well, it's again. I have to a lot of things I should preface by this is what I think someone told me, as opposed to this is the God's honest truth. So that's an important preface for anything I say. What I say may not be true, or at least it's my recollection of what I think someone told me. So don't take anything I say with a grain of salt. But anyway, if the 2 gigabyte thing is real, then we can actually have long videos with an improved codec. The current codec, I think, is quite old, and then having a resolution that's manageable on a phone, not super high def, especially if it's something like a podcast where you don't need to see every detail in high res. Then it's just basic stuff like having a video ad attached that is at least reasonably relevant to the material. So if it's a video about technology, that the ad is a technology related ad. If it's a video about gardening, it's a gardening related ad. It's sort of stuff that would make sense. Like I said, not splitting the atom. It's pretty basic, and that's what needs to happen on that front.
The main problem that we saw was getting good enough ad inventory for video ad. We found it was a lot harder to build up a large pile of ads to serve a distributed enough group of people, and it took a while for Twitch to even have bucketing of ads for users in the first place. Are you confident in the ability for Twitter to acquire video ad buckets and targets?
No, I think that is a legitimate issue. And actually, if I look at YouTube, because I actually watch YouTube without YouTube Premium, just to kind of see what kind of ads are being served here, and I very often will see sort of nonsense ads that are quite scammy and irrelevant to the subject. So if YouTube is even having trouble getting ads that are relevant to the subject, then probably Twitter will have some challenges that are significant. But I think part of this is also just reaching out proactively to companies that do things in a particular arena and say, we have inventory that is relevant. Why don't you try advertising with something that's in this genre and see how it goes. And then, like I said, if you can actually have a logical return on investment for advertisers, I think en masse they will be logical. You might have some irrational actors, but for the most part they will be logical. So but I do think that the ad inventory thing is an important problem. If you only have ads of a particular type, then you're going to have trouble achieving relevancy because you simply lack an ad that is relevant.
It also has to be a diverse enough set within that, because video ads are much more frustrating as a user to have as repeats. So if you see the same video ad 3 times, it's significantly more frustrating than seeing the same suggested tweet 3 times.
I feel like they're so bad everywhere. I feel like I get that all the time. Like when I'm watching, I have a cheap Hulu account with ads. It's the same ad 3 times. I'm like, this is terrible.
Google's the only platform that's really nailed this. Instagram's doing better here because their ad platform is incredible nowadays. Meta's been killing it, but the inventory problem for a diverse set of video ads is really tough.
Yeah. Doesn't TikTok build a model per user, and they spend something like 10 kilowatt hour per year per user?
No, I might have spread some of that misinformation. No, you can read TikTok's paper. You can read it. Monolith. It's pretty normal content recommendation engine stuff. They just do it well. The paper is published.
Is it actually crazy to do that though?
No, and we're gonna start to see that. I think that eventually you're going to build the infinite jest videotape. Eventually you're going to build content that is so compelling that you'll find people just stare at this stuff for hours and hours and hours and hours, and you can do that as the ML gets better and better and better. But unregretted user minutes, right?
Yeah, I think that's the right thing to aim for. I think it'd be hard to argue okay, we improved unregretted user minutes. That is definitely a good thing and not a bad thing. So, anyway, I gotta throw in the towel here, guys. But I do want to sort of leave off saying that there are a lot of people at Twitter doing great work, and it is super appreciated. So this is like, definitely not meant to be like, let's trash Twitter nonstop. It's like, at least aspirationally meant to be self-critical, and to say like, okay, what can we do to make things better? So I just do want to make sure that this does not come across as being unreasonably critical of those who are actually working hard to make Twitter better. So with that, good night, guys.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Elon.
your time.
Very supportive.
Thanks,
Can't
Elon.
wait to see where Twitter 2.0 goes.
Thanks, Elon.
Well, there you have it, everybody. That was another Twitter Spaces with Elon Musk. We are still looking forward to those Fauci files, so do you think he's going to release them before the new year? I think he is. Anyways, just want to wish you all a happy holiday, and I will see you next time. Thanks for joining me here on the Twitter Files. Take care. Well, there you have it, everybody. That was Elon Musk talking all things Tesla. And I'm telling you, mark his words. He said that Tesla is going to be the most profitable business of all time. I would personally not bet against Elon Musk. And there's a lot of people out there reading all the headlines, and they have such a short-term vision. And as human beings, we have such a short attention span. But if you think long-term, and if you think of the big picture, and he's got an even bigger picture for Tesla than we can even imagine, I think Tesla is just going to go down in history as the most legendary business of all time, next to SpaceX. So I'd like to hear your thoughts. And again, thank you for joining me. I will be uploading another video very shortly of another Twitter Spaces that Elon jumped in on. This one is going to be all kinds of technical talk and more. So if you haven't subscribed, please do so you can follow along, like this video. And until next time, this has been the Twitter Files. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
It's you.